The waitress defended a scared little girl from being thrown out and got fired for it. What she didn't know, the child's father was a mafia boss who never forgot a debt. The next morning, he showed up at her door with an offer she couldn't refuse. The lunch rush at La Verona hit like a tidal wave at exactly noon. Alara Chun wiped down table 5 for the third time that hour, her fingers trembling slightly as she balanced 4 plates on her left arm and a water pitcher in her right hand. The restaurant hummed with the kind of energy that came from old money and new deals, silk ties, diamond earrings, and conversations held in voices just low enough to seem important. She'd been working at La Verona for 2 years, ever since her accounting degree had proven worthless in a job market that wanted experience she didn't have. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could audit a Fortune 500 company's books, but she couldn't afford her own rent without tips from people who wouldn't remember her face. That's when she noticed the girl. She couldn't have been older than 10, sitting alone at table 5 with her hands folded in her lap like she was trying to disappear into the velvet cushions. Dark curls framed a face that was too serious for a child, and her eyes, deep brown, almost black, stared at the empty place sitting across from her with an intensity that made Alara's chest tighten. "Hey there," Alara said softly, approaching with a gentle smile. "Are you waiting for someone?" The girl nodded, but didn't speak. "That's okay. Would you like some water while you wait?" Another nod. Still no words. Alara had just finished pouring when she heard the sharp click of expensive shoes on marble floor. Marcus Webb, the floor manager, was cutting through the dining room with the expression of a man who'd found a rat in the kitchen. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice carrying across 3 tables. "That table is reserved for paying guests." The girl's shoulders hunched forward, and Alara felt something hot and protective flare in her chest. "She's clearly waiting for her parent," Alara said, keeping her voice level. "She's not bothering anyone." Marcus's face flushed red. He was new, transferred in from the corporate office just 3 weeks ago, and he'd been making changes ever since, all of them designed to remind the staff exactly who was in charge. "I don't recall asking for your input, Chin," he turned back to the girl. "You need to leave. Now." The girl's eyes went wide, and Alara saw her chin start to tremble. "She's a child," Alara said, stepping between them. "Not a trespasser. She's sitting quietly and waiting for someone." "There's no reason to." "There's every reason." Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Do you know how much we charge for that table? Do you know the kind of clientele we cater to? We can't have random kids wandering in off the street." She didn't wander in. Look at her clothes. It was true. The girl wore a navy blue dress that probably cost more than Alara's monthly salary, and her shoes were polished to a mirror shine. "I don't care if she's wearing a ball gown," Marcus snapped. "She's unaccompanied, and that's a liability. Now step aside or what?" The voice came from behind them, quiet and cold as winter ice. The entire dining room went silent. Not the natural lull of conversation, but the sudden, absolute silence that comes when every person in a room realizes something dangerous has just walked in. Alara turned. The man standing 5 feet away looked like he'd been carved from marble and expensive tailoring. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that was handsome in the way that dangerous things often are. His suit was charcoal gray and fit him like a second skin, and his eyes, the same deep brown as the girl's, swept across the scene with the kind of assessment that missed nothing. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits flanked the entrance like bookends. "Mr. DeLuca," Marcus stammered, and Alara watched all the color drain from his face. I wasn't aware." "Clearly." Vittorio DeLuca walked forward with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. He moved past Alara without looking at her and placed one hand on the girl's shoulder. "She's with me." The girl, Lucia, Alara would learn later, looked up at her father with those same serious eyes. But she didn't smile, didn't relax. If anything, she seemed to pull further into herself. "Of course," Marcus said, his voice pitching higher. Of course, Mr. DeLuca. I apologize for the confusion. If I'd known she was your daughter, you'd have what? Vittorio's voice was still quiet, but now it carried an edge that made Alera's survival instinct scream at her to back away. Treated her like a human being? That's not supposed to be conditional.
No, sir.
Absolutely not, sir. Vittorio finally looked at Alera, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. He studied her face for a long moment, long enough that she became aware of the smudge of marinara sauce on her white blouse and the flyaway hairs escaping from her ponytail. You, he said. Sir? You defended her. It wasn't a question, but Alera nodded anyway. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Something shifted in his expression, too quick for her to identify. Then Lucia did something unexpected. She slid out of her chair, walked past her father, and stood next to Alera instead. Her small hand reached out and grabbed the edge of Alera's apron. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Vittorio DeLuca looked at his daughter hiding behind a waitress instead of coming to him, and Alera saw something crack in his carefully controlled expression. Not anger, something deeper and more painful than that. Lucia, he said softly, come here. The girl didn't move. It's okay, Alera murmured, gently touching Lucia's shoulder. You should go with your dad. Lucia looked up at her with eyes that held far too much sadness for a 10-year-old, then slowly walked back to her father. But she kept glancing back at Alera, and Vittorio noticed. He noticed everything. Marcus, Vittorio said, still watching his daughter. You're going to apologize to my daughter. Yes, sir. Of course, Marcus practically tripped over himself. I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't mean to. And to her. Marcus blinked. Sir? The waitress. Apologized to her as well. Alera felt every eye in the restaurant turn to her. That's not necessary, she said quickly. It is. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he turned to her. I apologize for my tone. The words were forced and hollow, but Vittorio nodded once. He guided Lucia to her chair, and one of his men immediately appeared with menus. As Alera turned to leave, she heard Lucia whisper something to her father. She couldn't make out the words, but she heard his response clearly. I know, sweetheart. I know. She felt his eyes follow her all the way back to the kitchen, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something had just changed, though she had no idea what or how much it would cost her. The call came at 9:47 p.m., just as Alera was counting her tips in the employee break room.
Chun.
Manager's office.
Now.
She looked up to find Derek, the night supervisor, standing in the doorway with an expression that told her everything she needed to know. The other servers wouldn't meet her eyes. Her stomach dropped. The walk down the narrow hallway felt like a death march. Through the small window in the office door, she could see Marcus sitting behind the desk with someone else, a woman in a steel gray suit who Alera had never seen before. Sit down, Miss Chen, the woman said before Alera had even closed the door. I'm Karen Westbrook, regional manager for the DeLuca Restaurant Group. I've been reviewing today's incident. Alera's mouth went dry. The incident where I stopped a manager from throwing out a child. The incident where you countermanded direct instructions from your floor manager and caused a scene in front of valued guests. Karen's voice was crisp, clinical. Mr. Webb has filed a formal complaint regarding insubordination. Insubordination? Alera felt heat rising in her chest. He was going to kick out Mr. DeLuca's daughter. I was protecting. You were overstepping, Marcus cut in, leaning forward. I'm the floor manager. You're a waitress. The hierarchy exists for a reason. The hierarchy doesn't include humiliating children. Enough, Karen held up one hand. Miss Chun, I've reviewed your employment file. Your performance has been adequate, but today's behavior demonstrates a concerning lack of judgment and respect for authority. Alera stared at her. You're firing me for defending a 10-year-old girl. We're terminating your employment due to insubordination and failure to follow direct management instructions. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file. Karen slid a manila folder across the desk. Sign here. The words on the termination form blurred together. Alara thought about her rent, due in 5 days. About her student loans. About the 3 job interviews she'd had in the past month that had led nowhere. "This is insane," she whispered. "This is policy," Karen said flatly. "Sign, please." Alara's hand shook as she picked up the pen. The signature came out jagged and angry. "Security will escort you out," Marcus said, and she heard the satisfaction in his voice. "Leave your uniform and apron in your locker." The night air hit her like a slap. Alara stood on the sidewalk outside La Verona, holding a cardboard box with 2 years of her life inside it, a spare pair of non-slip shoes, a cracked coffee mug someone had given her last Christmas, a photo of her grandmother. The restaurant glowed behind her, warm and golden, full of people who would never know her name or care that she'd just lost everything for doing the right thing. "Stupid," she muttered, wiping angry tears from her cheeks. So stupid. But even as she said it, she knew she'd do it again. The look on Lucia's face, that fear, that loneliness, had been too familiar. Alara had been that scared kid once a long time ago. She started walking, her feet aching in shoes that had carried her through a 12-hour shift. Across the street, a black town car idled at the curb. Alara didn't notice it. Didn't see the tinted rear window roll down just an inch, or the small hand that pressed against the glass from inside. But Vittorio De Luca saw everything. He watched the waitress walk away with her cardboard box and her wounded pride, and he saw the way his daughter's eyes tracked her retreating figure. Lucia's palm was flat against the window, fingers spread wide like she was trying to reach through the glass.
"Papa," Lucia whispered.
It was the first word she'd spoken to him all evening. She said. Vittorio looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't seen in months. Concern for someone else. Connection. Ever since her mother's death 8 months ago, Lucia had retreated into silence. The therapist said it was trauma, that she needed time. But Vittorio had watched his daughter disappear a little more each day, and he'd felt helpless to stop it. Today, for the first time, she'd reached out to someone. A stranger. A waitress who'd risked her job to defend her. "Drive," he told his driver quietly. As the car pulled away from the curb, Vittorio made a phone call.
"Marco."
"It's me."
"No, Lucia's fine."
"I need you to send me the personnel file for one of your servers."
"Chun."
Alara Chun. "Because I'm asking. Have it on my desk by morning." He hung up and looked at his daughter. She turned away from the window now, staring down at her hands folded in her lap, back to the silent, scared girl she'd become. "She stood up for you," Vittorio said softly. Lucia nodded. Even though it meant trouble for her. Another nod. Vittorio thought about the way Alara had stepped between his daughter and Marcus, without hesitation. No calculation, no thought for consequences. Just immediate, instinctive protection of someone smaller and more vulnerable. In his world, people didn't do things without calculating the cost first. Loyalty was purchased, protection was negotiated, and kindness always came with a price tag. But this woman, this waitress with marinara sauce on her shirt and exhaustion in her eyes, had asked for nothing, expected nothing. And his daughter had seen it, had responded to it.
"Papa."
Lucia's voice was tiny. "Is she going to be okay?" Vittorio looked out the window at the city sliding past, all sharp edges and hard angles. "Yes," he said, making a decision. "She's going to be fine." He didn't know yet what he was going to do. Didn't have a plan. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The woman who defended his daughter wasn't going to suffer for it. Not if he had anything to say about it. And Vittorio De Luca always had something to say about it. Alara woke up to 17 missed calls from her roommate and the sound of someone knocking on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and squinted through the peephole. A man in a black suit and driver's cap stood in the hallway, holding a cream-colored envelope. "Miss Chun," he called through the door. "I have a delivery for you." Alara's first instinct was to pretend she wasn't home. In her experience, hand-delivered envelopes at 7 in the morning were never good news. Eviction notices, legal summons, debt collection warnings. But curiosity won out. She opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Who are you?" "My name is Thomas. I work for Mr. DeLuca." The driver held up the envelope. "He asked me to deliver this personally and wait for your response." Alara's heart started pounding. Response to what? "I believe the letter explains everything, miss." She stared at the envelope like it might bite her, then slowly unhooked the chain and took it. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind that whispered old money and power. "I'll just wait in the car," Thomas said, gesturing to the black Mercedes idling at the curb below. "Take your time." Alara closed the door and turned the envelope over in her hands. Her name was written across the front in elegant script, Ms. Alara Chen. She broke the wax seal, an actual wax seal, like something from a period drama, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Miss Chen, I understand you recently became available for new employment opportunities. I would like to offer you a position as an internal auditor for DeLuca Holdings, specifically overseeing the financial operations of our restaurant division. The salary is $85,000 annually, plus benefits and performance bonuses. Your accounting degree from NYU and your first-hand experience with restaurant operations make you uniquely qualified for this role. If you're interested, Thomas will drive you to my office this morning for a formal interview.
Regards, Vittorio De Luca."
Alara read it 3 times. $85,000. That was more than double what she'd been making at La Verona. That was student loan payments and rent with money left over. That was security. But it didn't make any sense. She grabbed her phone and called the one person who might have answers, her former coworker, Jenna. "Oh my God, you're alive," Jenna answered. "I've been texting you all night. Have you seen the news?" "What news?" "Someone leaked security footage from yesterday. You, standing up to Marcus, Mr. DeLuca walking in, it's everywhere. People are calling you a hero. There's even a hashtag Justice for Alara." Alara's stomach lurched. What? It gets better. Marcus got fired this morning.
Karen too.
Corporate released a statement about not reflecting company values or something. Girl, you broke the internet. Alara sank onto her couch, trying to process. "Jenna, I need you to be honest with me. What do you know about Vittorio DeLuca?" The line went quiet for a moment. "Only what everyone knows," Jenna said carefully. "He owns half the restaurants in the city.
His family's been in
business for 3 generations. People don't ask too many questions about where the money comes from." "You mean I mean he's powerful and connected, and you defended his kid, and now he's offering you a job. Take it, L. Whatever happened yesterday, you earned this." After they hung up, Alara stood in her tiny apartment, looking at the envelope in her hand. She thought about her empty bank account, about the rejection emails from accounting firms who said she lacked experience, about her grandmother, who'd worked 3 jobs to put her through college, telling her to be brave. She got dressed. The DeLuca Holdings office occupied the top 3 floors of a building in the financial district. Thomas led her through a lobby that looked like a museum, past security that clearly recognized him, and into an elevator with mirrors and gold trim. "Mr. DeLuca appreciates punctuality," Thomas said as they ascended. "But he also appreciates honesty. If you're uncomfortable with anything, say so." The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where a woman with silver hair and perfect posture sat behind a glass desk. "Miss Chun," she said warmly, "Mr. DeLuca is expecting you. Go right in." The office beyond was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, dark wood furniture, and artwork that probably cost more than Alara's college education. But what caught her attention was the man standing by the window. Vittorio DeLuca looked different in daylight, less like a movie villain and more like a tired father. He had loosened his tie, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. "Ms. Chun, thank you for coming." "I'm not sure I had much choice," Alara said before she could stop herself. To her surprise, he smiled, just a slight curve of his mouth. You always have a choice. That's the point. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Alara sat, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. I'll be direct, Vittorio said, settling into his own chair. I need someone I can trust to look at my restaurant division's finances. Someone who understands the operations from the inside and isn't afraid to tell me the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Why me? You don't know anything about me. I know you put my daughter's dignity before your own job security. I know you have a degree in accounting from a good school, but somehow ended up waiting tables. And I know you're smart enough to be suspicious of this offer. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a formal contract, everything spelled out in clear language, salary, benefits, job description. This is legitimate, he said. No tricks, no obligations beyond the work itself. If you accept, you'll report directly to me. You'll have full access to financial records, and I expect complete honesty in your assessments. Alara looked at the contract, then at him. Why does this feel like I'm missing something? Because you're smart, Vittorio leaned back in his chair. Here's what you're missing. My daughter spoke to me yesterday for the first time in months. Because of you. That's not something I take lightly. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. I'm not asking you to be her friend or her nanny, he continued. I'm offering you a job you're qualified for. What you did yesterday proved you have integrity. That's rare in my world. Alara thought about her empty apartment, her maxed-out credit cards, her grandmother's voice telling her that sometimes opportunities disguise themselves as risks. She picked up the pen. When do I start? 3 weeks into the job, Alara found the first irregularity. She'd been sitting in her new office, a small but professional space on the 15th floor, reviewing invoices from the restaurant division when a number caught her eye. An order for $47,832 worth of specialty ingredients to a restaurant in Brooklyn. The amount itself wasn't unusual. High-end restaurants spent serious money on imported truffles, aged beef, premium seafood. What was unusual was that she'd seen that exact number before. Alara pulled up her spreadsheet and started cross-referencing. Her coffee went cold as she worked, and the autumn sun tracked across her desk while she followed the thread. There it was again. $47,832 paid to a different vendor. And again 3 weeks later to yet another company. Same amount, different names. She sat back in her chair, chewing her thumbnail, a nervous habit from childhood that her grandmother had never managed to break. It could be coincidence. Could be a standard contract amount that multiple vendors used. But Alara had spent 2 years watching money move through La Verona's registers, and she knew what normal looked like. This wasn't normal. She pulled up the vendor information. 3 different companies: Castellano Food Imports, Meridian Premium Supplies, Verde Gourmet Distributors. Different addresses, different tax IDs. On paper, they looked legitimate. But when she dug deeper, following the money through the payment system, all 3 accounts traced back to the same routing number at a bank in Delaware. A bank that specialized in corporate shell companies. Her heart started beating faster. Don't jump to conclusions, she muttered to herself. Could be a parent company. Could be a holding structure. But as she kept digging, the pattern became clearer. Over the past 18 months, roughly $23 million had flowed through these vendors. The amounts varied. Sometimes $47,832, sometimes $63,450, once a clean $100,000, but they all followed the same route. Money went out to fake vendors. Then it disappeared into the Delaware bank. And from there, Alara couldn't trace it further. The trail went cold. She was still staring at her screen when her phone rang, making her jump. Ms. Chun. Mr. DeLuca would like to see you in his office. Her mouth went dry.
Now.
Yes, please. The walk to Vittorio's office felt longer than usual. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had he somehow known she was digging into this? Was she about to be fired again for asking too many questions? But when she entered his office, Vittorio was standing by his daughter's side. Lucia was perched on the leather couch, doing homework with a focused intensity that Alara had come to recognize as her normal state. "Miss Chun," Vittorio said, and there was something different in his voice. Not the careful politeness he usually used. Something more genuine. "Lucia wanted to thank you." The girl looked up, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled, small and shy, but real. "My teacher said my essay was the best in class," Lucia said quietly. "You helped me with the introduction last week. Remember?" Alara did remember. She'd run into Lucia in the building's cafe, struggling with an assignment about courage. They'd talked for 20 minutes about what bravery really meant. "That was all you," Alara said gently. "I just asked questions." "You asked the right questions," Lucia countered, then looked at her father. "Can I show her the grade?" "Of course." As Lucia dug through her backpack, Vittorio moved closer to Alara. "She's been different since you started working here," he said quietly. "More herself."
I'm glad.
"I am too," he paused. "But that's not why I called you up here. You've been working on the restaurant division audit for 3 weeks now. Have you found anything unusual?" The question hit her like cold water. Alara looked at him, really looked. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes were sharp, watching her reaction. This was a test. She could lie, could say everything looked fine, and keep her well-paying job and her comfortable office. But Vittorio De Luca had hired her specifically because she'd told the truth when it was dangerous. "Yes," she said simply. "I've found something." His expression didn't change, but she saw his shoulders tense slightly. "Go on." "Not here," Alara said, glancing at Lucia.
And not now. But yes.
"There's a pattern in the invoices that doesn't make sense. Money moving through shell companies." For a long moment, Vittorio just looked at her. Then he nodded once. "My office. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Bring everything you found." "Should I be worried?" Alara asked before she could stop herself. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "You're being honest with me about my own business. Most people wouldn't have the courage. Most people probably want to keep their jobs. And you don't." Alara thought about it. "I want to keep my integrity more." "Good," Vittorio said. "Because what I'm about to ask you to help me with requires both." Lucia appeared at her father's elbow, holding up a paper with a bright red A+ at the top. "That's wonderful," Alara said, forcing warmth into her voice despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. As she left the office, she heard Lucia whisper to her father, "I like her, Papa. She doesn't pretend." "I know, sweetheart," Vittorio replied. "That's exactly why I hired her." That night, Alara sat in her apartment with her laptop open, staring at the spreadsheets she'd compiled. $23 million was a lot of money to wash through fake vendors. Enough money to mean serious trouble for whoever was behind it. And tomorrow morning, she was going to walk into Vittorio De Luca's office and tell him that someone in his organization was stealing from him. She thought about the rumors she'd heard about his family, about the carefully worded warnings from Jenna, about the kind of men who waited in black cars and never smiled. Then she thought about Lucia's essay on courage and the way Vittorio had looked at his daughter with such desperate love. "Integrity," she muttered, closing her laptop. "Grandmother, I hope you knew what you were talking about." She tried to sleep but mostly stared at the ceiling, wondering if she'd just made the smartest decision of her life. Or the last one. Alara arrived at Vittorio's office at 6:55 a.m., carrying a leather portfolio stuffed with printouts, spreadsheets, and 3 flash drives containing every piece of evidence she'd compiled. The reception area was empty except for Thomas, who'd apparently graduated from driver to morning security detail. "He's expecting you," Thomas said, gesturing toward the office doors. "Fair warning, he's had 4 espressos already. It's going to be that kind of morning." Inside, Vittorio stood at the windows overlooking the city, his back to her. Another man sat in one of the leather chairs, older, maybe 60, with iron-gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Miss Chun, Vittorio said without turning around. This is Frank Moretti. He handles security and internal investigations for my organization. Frank stood and offered his hand. His grip was firm, professional. Ms. Chun, I've heard good things. Should I be nervous that security is here? Alara asked, setting her portfolio on the desk. That depends, Frank said with a slight smile. Are you about to tell us something that makes us nervous? Probably. Vittorio finally turned around. He looked like he hadn't slept, tie already loosened despite the early hour, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Show us what you found. Alara opened her portfolio and spread the documents across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. Over the past 18 months, approximately $23 million has been paid to 3 vendor companies, Castellano Food Imports, Meridian Premium Supplies, and Verde Gourmet Distributors. She pointed to the highlighted sections. Different names, different addresses, but look at the routing numbers. They all trace back to the same bank in Delaware. Frank leaned forward, studying the papers. Shell companies. That's what it looks like. But here's where it gets interesting. Alara pulled out another spreadsheet. These payments are perfectly timed. They happen right after large cash deposits from the restaurants, weekend receipts, holiday rushes, private events. Someone's watching the money come in and immediately siphoning it off. How much per transaction? Vittorio asked, his voice dangerously quiet. It varies. Sometimes 47,000, sometimes 63, once a clean 100 grand. The amounts change, but the pattern doesn't. High-volume weekends mean higher vendor payments. Frank picked up one of the invoices, examining it closely. These look legitimate. Proper letterhead, tax IDs, everything. They are legitimate, Alara said. That's the genius of it. These companies exist on paper. They're registered, they have bank accounts, they file taxes. But if you look at what they're supposedly supplying, she pulled out another document. Castellano claims to import Italian truffles. But the restaurants they're supplying don't serve truffles. Meridian specializes in Japanese Wagyu beef, but 2 of their client restaurants are seafood-focused. The products don't match the businesses. Vittorio's jaw tightened. Someone created an entire laundering infrastructure inside my own restaurant group. Not just created it, Alara said carefully. Someone with high-level access. These payments have executive approval codes. They're going through legitimate channels with proper authorization. Frank and Vittorio exchanged a look that made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Who has executive approval authority for the restaurant division? Frank asked. Vittorio's expression hardened. Only 3 people. Myself, my CFO, and my cousin Marco. Your CFO is Sarah Chun, Frank said, reading from his phone. Been with you for 12 years, handles all major holdings. No red flags in her background. And Marco runs day-to-day operations for the restaurants. Vittorio finished. He's family. Alara watched emotions flicker across his face. Disbelief, anger, and something that looked like pain. I need to be sure, Vittorio said quietly. Family accusations aren't something I make lightly. Frank was already on his phone. Give me 2 hours. I'll pull Marco's personal financials, travel records, everything. While Frank made calls in the corner, Vittorio sat down heavily in his chair. For a moment, he didn't look like a powerful businessman or a dangerous man. He looked exhausted. My uncle brought Marco into the business when he was 22, Vittorio said, almost to himself. I taught him everything. When my father died, Marco stood beside me at the funeral and swore loyalty. I'm sorry, Alara said, and meant it. Don't be. If you're right, if he's stealing from me, then I need to know. He looked up at her. What made you bring this to me? You could have ignored it. Kept your head down. That's not who I am. No, Vittorio agreed. It's not. Which is why I believe you. Frank returned 40 minutes later with a tablet and an expression that confirmed everything. Marco DeLuca bought a house in the Caymans 6 months ago. Paid cash. $3 million. Frank swiped through screens. He's been making regular trips to Atlantic City, meeting with known associates of the Castellano crime family. Vittorio's hands clenched into fists on his desk. There's more, Frank continued grimly. 2 weeks ago, Marco had dinner with Vincent Castellano himself. My source says they were discussing business opportunities then. 3 days ago, he transferred ownership of 2 restaurants, La Verona and Casabianca, into his personal name, separate from DeLuca Holdings. He's selling them, Ilera said suddenly. That's the endgame. He's not just laundering money, he's positioning to sell off pieces of your empire to a rival. Vittorio stood up, walking back to the windows. The morning sun cast his shadow long across the floor. The incident at La Verona, he said quietly. When Marco's manager tried to humiliate my daughter in front of cameras. That wasn't an accident, was it? Frank shook his head. Security footage was leaked to 3 news outlets within an hour. Someone wanted that story to spread. Wanted you to look weak. Like you couldn't even protect your own child in your own restaurant. He was setting me up, Vittorio said, his voice cold as winter. Making me look incompetent so the other families would question my authority. So they'd be more willing to deal with him. Ilera felt ice slide down her spine. She'd stumbled into something far bigger and more dangerous than accounting fraud. What do we do? She asked. Vittorio turned to face them, and Ilera saw something shift in his expression, calculation replacing emotion, strategy replacing pain. We prove it, he said. And then we end it. The war room, as Frank called it, was actually a conference room on the 16th floor that Vittorio had cleared of everything except a massive table, 3 computers, and a wall-mounted screen that currently displayed Marco's financial web. Ilera had been working with Vittorio for 6 days straight, often until midnight, tracing every transaction, building an airtight case. She'd expected him to be demanding, maybe even cruel. Instead, she discovered he was meticulous, patient, and surprisingly willing to admit when he didn't understand something. Explain this again, Vittorio said, leaning over her shoulder to study the screen. It was past 10 p.m., and his tie had disappeared hours ago. The LLC structure. How does it hide the ownership? Ilera pulled up a diagram she created. Think of it like nesting dolls. Marco created Verde Gourmet, but it's owned by another company called Adriatic Holdings. And Adriatic is owned by a third company registered in the Caymans. Each layer makes it harder to trace back to him. But you traced it. Because I knew what to look for. And because she hesitated. Because whoever set this up got lazy with the dates. Look, she highlighted several entries. All 3 shell companies were registered on the same day by the same incorporation service. That's sloppy. If you're going to build a fake empire, you space things out. Make it look organic. Vittorio studied the screen, then smiled. Not the careful, controlled expression he showed the world, but something genuine. You would have been a terrifying criminal. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Ilera forgot about spreadsheets and shell companies. Then Vittorio's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. It's Lucia's school, he said, checking the screen. I need to take this. He stepped out, and Ilera heard his voice in the hallway, transforming instantly into something softer.
What?
No, I'm still at work. I know, I'm sorry. Yes, I promise I'll read with you tomorrow night. When he returned, he looked guilty. She's been asking about you, he said. Wants to know if you're eating properly. Apparently, she's worried we're working too hard. Ilera laughed.
She's 10.
She should be worried about homework, not us. She's had to grow up faster than she should have. Vittorio sat down across from her, and the exhaustion on his face was suddenly visible. Her mother died in a car accident 8 months ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. I'm so sorry. Lucia was in the car. She saw everything. He rubbed his eyes. The therapist says she has survivor's guilt. That's why she stopped talking for a while. She thinks she should have died instead of her mother. Ilera's chest tightened. That's not. I know. But knowing something and feeling it are different things. He looked at her. You're the first person she's opened up to. Not the therapist, not me, not her grandmother. You. I'm not doing anything special. You're not treating her like she's broken. Everyone else does. They use soft voices and careful words, like she's made of glass. But you just
Talk to her.
about homework and books and normal things. Maybe that's what she needs, Alara said quietly, to feel normal again. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the clicking of keyboards and the occasional rustle of paper. Around midnight, Alara yawned so hard her jaw cracked.
Go home, Vittorio said.
We can finish this tomorrow.
I've fine.
You fell asleep at your desk yesterday. I had to wake you up. That was a strategic power nap. He actually laughed, a real laugh that changed his entire face. You're terrible at taking care of yourself, says the man who's had coffee for 3 meals today. Touché. He stood and stretched, and Alara tried not to notice the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders.
Come on.
I'll have Thomas drive you home. I can't take the subway.
At midnight?
Absolutely not. I'm a grown woman, Mr. DeLuca. I've been taking the subway at midnight for years. Not anymore, you haven't. His tone left no room for argument. And call me Vittorio. We've been working together every night for a week. I think we're past formalities. In the elevator down, Alara felt the exhaustion hit her all at once. She leaned against the wall, and Vittorio handed her his suit jacket. You're shivering.
I've fine.
You say that a lot when it's not true. She pulled the jacket around her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and coffee. Why are you being so nice to me? Because you're helping me save my business. And because he paused, considering his words. Because Lucia talks about you at dinner. She told me yesterday that you explained compound interest using candy. Apparently, it made perfect sense. She was trying to understand her savings account. Most adults can't explain compound interest to a 10-year-old. You made it a game. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Thomas was waiting by a Blacktown car. Thank you, Alara said, handing back his jacket. For the ride. And for trusting me with all this. Thank you for not running away screaming when you realized my cousin was committing fraud. Vittorio opened the car door for her. Get some sleep, Alara. Tomorrow, we start building the presentation for the shareholders meeting. That's in 3 weeks. Which means we have 3 weeks to make this airtight. Marco can't suspect anything. As the car pulled away, Alara looked back to see Vittorio still standing under the building's lights, hands in his pockets, watching until she was out of sight. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Lucia says you need to eat breakfast tomorrow.
She's probably right.
Alara smiled and saved the number, then leaned her head against the window and watched the city blur past. She was helping a maybe mob boss take down his corrupt cousin, bonding with his traumatized daughter, and possibly developing feelings for a man whose world was nothing like hers. Her grandmother would have called this trouble. But somehow, it felt like the first time in years that Alara was exactly where she was supposed to be. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under Vittorio's office door before anyone else arrived. Alara didn't know about it yet. She was 3 floors down, cross-referencing Marco's travel expenses with cash withdrawals from the shell companies, building the timeline that would expose him at the shareholders' meeting in 2 weeks. She'd just highlighted another suspicious transaction when her phone rang. My office. Now, Vittorio's voice was cold, flat. Nothing like the warmth she'd gotten used to over the past 3 weeks. Her stomach dropped. The walk to his office felt like a nightmare. When she entered, Frank was already there, standing with his arms crossed. Vittorio sat behind his desk, and spread across it were documents she'd never seen before. Ledgers with her signature. Wire transfers under her authorization. Communications between her and someone named V. Castellano. What is this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You tell me, Vittorio said, and his tone could have frozen fire. Frank picked up one of the documents. These ledgers show you've been routing payments to Verde Gourmet under your employee credentials. The wire transfers show money moving from DeLuca Holdings to an account registered in your name. And these emails, he held up printed pages. These emails show you've been in contact with Vincent Castellano for 6 weeks. That's impossible. I've never. Your digital signature is on every page, Frank interrupted. Your employee login. Your authorization codes. Alara felt the room tilt. Someone forged these. This is Marco. He knows we're investigating him, so he's trying to. Marco brought these to my attention this morning, Vittorio said quietly, along with a very concerned speech about hiring strangers too quickly. About how you approached him 3 months ago asking about job openings in the restaurant division. 3 months ago? I didn't even know who you were 3 months ago. There's a record of the email. From your personal account. Then someone hacked my account. Vittorio, you know this isn't real. We've been working together every night for weeks. You've seen what I found. What you found could have been a setup, Frank said. Plant fake evidence against Marco while you're actually the one stealing. Classic misdirection. Alara looked at Vittorio, searching his face for any sign that he believed her. But his expression was carved from stone. My advisors are recommending I make an example, he said softly. Someone steals from me, especially someone I trusted. There are expectations about how I respond. The words hung in the air like a threat. You don't believe this, Alara said, her voice shaking. You can't believe this. Show me why I shouldn't. It was a lifeline and she grabbed it. The signatures, she said quickly. Let me see the signatures on those ledgers. Frank hesitated, looking at Vittorio, who nodded once. He handed her the documents. Alara studied them, her hands trembling. Then she saw it. Look at the dates, she said, pointing. This ledger is supposedly from July 15th. But look at the timestamp in the corner. It says the document was created on October 20th. 4 days ago. Could be when it was scanned, Frank said. Then check the metadata on the original file. If these are real ledgers from July, the creation date should match. If they were made last week, she looked at Vittorio. Then someone created fake evidence and backdated it. Frank pulled out his phone. I'll have IT pull the file metadata. And the emails. Alara continued, gaining momentum. You said they show I contacted Vincent Castellano. But I've never heard that name before this investigation. Check my actual email account. My real one. Not whatever fake account someone set up. Check my phone records. If I've been communicating with this person, there should be traces everywhere, not just convenient printed copies. The bank account in your name, Frank pressed. How do you explain that? I don't. Because I didn't open it. But I can tell you how to prove it's fake. Bank accounts require in-person identity verification or notarized documents. Subpoena the bank's records. Check if the signature matches mine. Check if there's security footage of me opening the account. She was breathing hard now, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Everything you're showing me is paper. Digital copies. Nothing that requires me to physically be somewhere or do something in person. That's not a coincidence. That's because whoever forged this couldn't fake those things. Vittorio leaned back in his chair, studying her. The silence stretched out for an eternity. Frank, he finally said. Make the calls. Boss.
Now.
Frank left the room, and Alara and Vittorio were alone. You knew, she said quietly. You knew these were fake. I suspected. Then why? Understanding dawned. You were testing me. You wanted to see if I'd panic. If I'd run or break down or... I needed to know who you are, Vittorio interrupted. He stood and walked to the window. Marco didn't just create these documents. He told me you've been asking questions about my family, about the old business. He said you were planning to go to the FBI. That's insane. Is it? You're a civilian. You stumbled into something dangerous. It would be logical for you to want protection. To cut a deal. Alara's anger flared. I could have gone to the FBI the first week. I could have taken what I found and walked away clean. But I didn't. Because you trusted me, and I don't betray people who trust me. Vittorio turned to face her. Marco's getting desperate. These forgeries, they're sloppy, made in a hurry. That means he knows we're close. So what happens now?
Now.
Vittorio picked up the forged documents and walked to the fireplace in the corner of his office. He lit them on fire, watching them curl and blacken. Now you prove everything you just said. You show me the timestamps, the metadata, the bank records. You prove these are forgeries. And if I can't? He met her eyes across the flames. You will. Because you're brilliant and you're honest and you don't break under pressure. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. I needed to know that for certain. Now I do. Alara should have been angry. Should have walked out and never come back. Instead, she understood. In Vittorio's world, trust wasn't given. It was tested, proven, forged in fire. I'll need access to IT, she said. And a lawyer to subpoena those bank records. You'll have whatever you need. And Vittorio? She waited until he looked at her. Don't ever test me like that again. Next time, just ask. Something that might have been respect, or maybe something more, flickered in his eyes. Deal. It took Alara 6 hours to dismantle Marco's forgeries. She worked with Vittorio's IT team, pulling metadata from every document. The ledgers had been created 4 days ago using software that didn't even exist in July. The emails came from a spoof server in Romania. The bank account used a stolen social security number, hers, but applied for before she'd even started working at DeLuca Holdings. By 3 p.m., she had a folder of evidence proving her innocence. By 4 p.m., Frank had confirmed through his contacts that Marco had been seen meeting with a document forger in Queens 2 weeks ago. By 5 p.m., Alara was exhausted, vindicated, and angrier than she'd been in years. She found Vittorio in his office, standing at the window in the pose she'd come to recognize as his thinking position. It's all here, she said, dropping the folder on his desk harder than necessary. Proof that every single document was fabricated. The bank account was opened using a fake ID. The emails were sent from a server that masks the real sender. Even the ledgers. Marco used accounting software from 2024 to create documents, supposedly from July 2025. Vittorio turned, and she saw something in his expression that made her pause. You already knew all this, didn't you? I suspected Marco was behind it from the moment I saw the envelope, he admitted. The timing was too convenient. The evidence too neat. Then why did you put me through that? Why make me prove it? He crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. Because Marco will try again. And next time, it might be in front of the board or the shareholders or someone I can't just dismiss with a phone call. I needed to see how you'd react under pressure. If you'd fall apart or fight back. That's unfair?
Yes.
Necessary? Also yes, his voice softened. In 2 weeks, we're going to walk into a room full of people who've known Marco for decades. People who've done business with my family for generations. We're going to accuse him of fraud and betrayal. They won't want to believe it. So they'll look for reasons to doubt us. To doubt you especially. You're an outsider, someone I hired after a viral video. They'll wonder about your motives. Question your evidence. And if you show even a moment of uncertainty, Marco will exploit it. Alara understood, but that didn't make it hurt less. You could have just told me that. I could have. But telling you and showing you are different things. Vittorio picked up the folder she'd compiled. This afternoon, you proved you don't panic. You proved you can build an airtight case even when you're angry and scared. And you proved that you can handle whatever Marco throws at you. He walked to the fireplace, the same one where he'd burned Marco's forgeries that morning, and placed the fake documents inside. Watch, he said. Alara approached as he lit the papers. They caught quickly, flames consuming the lies. This is what we're going to do to Marco, Vittorio said quietly. Not with violence. Not with threats. Just truth, burning away everything false until only reality remains. They stood side by side, watching the fire. I'm sorry I doubted you, he said. Even for a moment. You didn't doubt me. You tested me. There's a difference. Is there? Alara thought about it. Doubt would have meant you believed Marco's lies. Testing meant you wanted proof they were lies. So yes, there's a difference. Vittorio smiled, that genuine smile she'd only seen a handful of times. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me. Your daughter did. True, he pulled out his phone and showed her a text message. Papa, did you apologize to Alara yet? She was probably scared. You should bring her cookies.
Elle.
Despite everything, Alara laughed. She's managing you. She's been managing me since she was 3, he pocketed the phone. But she's right. I owe you more than an apology. Name it. I don't want anything, Alara. I mean it. I'm not doing this for rewards or favors. I'm doing it because it's right. She met his eyes. And because somewhere along the way, I started caring about you and Lucia. Not as my boss and his daughter. As people. The air between them felt charged, heavy with words neither of them was ready to say. Vittorio broke the moment first. There's something else you need to know. About the shareholders' meeting. What? Marco won't come alone. He'll bring Vincent Castellano as a business consultant. He's going to try to strong-arm the vote, make it look like the Castellano family supports him over me. Can he do that? In my world?
Yes.
Perception is everything. If it looks like I'm losing support from the other families, the shareholders will panic. They'll vote to preserve their investments, even if it means backing Marco. Alara's mind raced. So we need more than just evidence. We need to show that you're still in control. That backing you is the smart move.
Exactly.
Which is why I need to ask you something difficult. What? Vittorio hesitated, and she realized she'd never seen him look uncertain before. The presentation at the shareholders' meeting. I need you to give it. Me? Why not you? Or Frank, or... Because you're the one who found the fraud. You're the one who built the case.
And more importantly, he paused.
You're the one person in that room who has nothing to gain from lying. The shareholders know who I am, what my family has done. They'll wonder if I'm just eliminating a rival.
But you?
You're independent, credible. If the evidence comes from you, they can't dismiss it as a family power play. Alara felt panic rising in her chest. I'm not a public speaker. I'm an accountant. You're more than that. You've proven it over and over. He placed his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you could do this. Lucia wouldn't trust you if you couldn't. The mention of Lucia steadied her. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Thank you. But Vittorio? No more tests. From here on out, we either trust each other completely, or this doesn't work. He held out his hand. Complete trust. I promise. She shook his hand, and neither of them let go for longer than necessary. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. In 2 weeks, they'd face Marco together. But tonight, standing in the firelight with Vittorio's hand still warm in hers, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. It took Alara 6 hours to dismantle Marco's forgeries. She worked with Vittorio's IT team, pulling metadata from every document. The ledgers had been created 4 days ago using software that didn't even exist in July. The emails came from a spoof server in Romania. The bank account used a stolen social security number, hers, but applied for before she'd even started working at DeLuca Holdings. By 3 p.m., she had a folder of evidence proving her innocence. By 4 p.m., Frank had confirmed through his contacts that Marco had been seen meeting with a document forger in Queens 2 weeks ago. By 5 p.m., Alara was exhausted, vindicated, and angrier than she'd been in years. She found Vittorio in his office, standing at the window in the pose she'd come to recognize as his thinking position. It's all here, she said, dropping the folder on his desk harder than necessary. Proof that every single document was fabricated. The bank account was opened using a fake ID. The emails were sent from a server that masks the real sender. Even the ledgers. Marco used accounting software from 2024 to create documents supposedly from July 2025. Vittorio turned, and she saw something in his expression that made her pause. You already knew all this, didn't you? I suspected Marco was behind it from the moment I saw the envelope, he admitted. The timing was too convenient. The evidence too neat. Then why did you put me through that? Why make me prove it? He crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. Because Marco will try again. And next time, it might be in front of the board or the shareholders or someone I can't just dismiss with a phone call. I needed to see how you'd react under pressure. If you'd fall apart or fight back. That's unfair? Yes. Necessary? Also yes, his voice softened. In 2 weeks, we're going to walk into a room full of people who've known Marco for decades. People who've done business with my family for generations. We're going to accuse him of fraud and betrayal. They won't want to believe it. So they'll look for reasons to doubt us. To doubt you especially. You're an outsider, someone I hired after a viral video. They'll wonder about your motives. Question your evidence. And if you show even a moment of uncertainty, Marco will exploit it. Alara understood, but that didn't make it hurt less. You could have just told me that. I could have. But telling you and showing you are different things. Vittorio picked up the folder she compiled. This afternoon, you proved you don't panic. You proved you can build an airtight case even when you're angry and scared. And you prove that you can handle whatever Marco throws at you. He walked to the fireplace, the same one where he'd burned Marco's forgeries that morning, and placed the fake documents inside. Watch, he said. Alara approached as he lit the papers. They caught quickly, flames consuming the lies. This is what we're going to do to Marco, Vittorio said quietly. Not with violence. Not with threats. Just truth, burning away everything false until only reality remains. They stood side by side, watching the fire. I'm sorry I doubted you, he said. Even for a moment. You didn't doubt me. You tested me. There's a difference. Is there? Alara thought about it. Doubt would have meant you believed Marco's lies. Testing meant you wanted proof they were lies. So yes, there's a difference. Vittorio smiled, that genuine smile she'd only seen a handful of times. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me. Your daughter did. True, he pulled out his phone and showed her a text message. Papa, did you apologize to Alara yet? She was probably scared. You should bring her cookies. Despite everything, Alara laughed. She's managing you. She's been managing me since she was 3, he pocketed the phone. But she's right. I owe you more than an apology. Name it. I don't want anything. Alara. I mean it. I'm not doing this for rewards or favors. I'm doing it because it's right. She met his eyes. And because somewhere along the way, I started caring about you and Lucia. Not as my boss and his daughter. As people. The air between them felt charged, heavy with words neither of them was ready to say. Vittorio broke the moment first. There's something else you need to know. About the shareholders' meeting. What? Marco won't come alone. He'll bring Vincent Castellano as a business consultant. He's going to try to strong-arm the vote, make it look like the Castellano family supports him over me. Can he do that? In my world? Yes. Perception is everything. If it looks like I'm losing support from the other families, the shareholders will panic. They'll vote to preserve their investments, even if it means backing Marco. Alara's mind raced. So we need more than just evidence. We need to show that you're still in control. That backing you is the smart move. Exactly. Which is why I need to ask you something difficult. What? Vittorio hesitated, and she realized she'd never seen him look uncertain before. The presentation at the shareholders' meeting. I need you to give it. Me? Why not you? Or Frank, or... Because you're the one who found the fraud. You're the one who built the case. And more importantly, he paused. You're the one person in that room who has nothing to gain from lying. The shareholders know who I am, what my family has done. They'll wonder if I'm just eliminating a rival. But you? You're independent. Credible. If the evidence comes from you, they can't dismiss it as a family power play. Alara felt panic rising in her chest. I'm not a public speaker. I'm an accountant. You're more than that. You've proven it over and over. He placed his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you could do this. Lucia wouldn't trust you if you couldn't. The mention of Lucia steadied her. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Thank you. But Vittorio? No more tests. From here on out, we either trust each other completely, or this doesn't work. He held out his hand. Complete trust. I promise. She shook his hand, and neither of them let go for longer than necessary. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. In 2 weeks, they'd face Marco together. But tonight, standing in the firelight with Vittorio's hand still warm in hers, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next 10 days blurred together in a haze of preparation. Alara rehearsed the presentation until she could recite every number in her sleep. Frank coached her on how to handle hostile questions. And Vittorio taught her something unexpected, how to read a room. Numbers tell the truth, he said one evening as they worked late. But people decide what truth they want to believe. You need to watch their faces, their body language. The moment someone stops making eye contact, you've lost them. That's terrifying. That's business. He pulled up a seating chart for the shareholders' meeting. These 12 people control the vote. Marco needs 7 to win. We need 7 to bury him. Alara studied the names. What about the other families? The Castellanos? Vincent will be there, playing the role of concerned business partner. He'll act like he's just there to observe, but really he's there to intimidate. To remind everyone that Marco has powerful friends. And you don't.
Vittorio smiled grimly.
I have something better than powerful friends. I have the truth. And I have you. 3 days before the meeting, they hit a problem. Frank burst into the war room holding his phone. We've got a situation. Marco just filed a counter-complaint with the board, claiming you've been harassing him, demanding investigations into his personal finances without cause. That's absurd, Alara said. Everything we've done has been legitimate audit work. He's got affidavits from 3 restaurant managers saying you've been asking inappropriate questions about Marco's private business dealings. Questions that have nothing to do with your job. Vittorio's expression darkened. He's trying to flip the script. Make it look like we're on a witch hunt. There's more, Frank continued. He's demanding you be removed from the presentation. Says you're biased against him and your findings can't be trusted. Alara felt her carefully built confidence start to crack. Can he do that?
He can try, Vittorio said.
But he won't succeed. Frank, I need those managers in my office tomorrow morning. Let's find out what Marco promised them to sign those affidavits. By the next afternoon, they had their answer. Marco had offered each manager a promotion and $20,000 bonus to sign statements claiming Alara had been unprofessional. They didn't even know what they were signing, one manager admitted, pale-faced and shaking. Marco said it was just standard HR documentation, that you were being transferred and they needed to document your work history. Vittorio's voice was ice. And the money? He said it was a performance bonus. I swear, Mr. DeLuca, I didn't know it was to hurt anyone. After the managers left, Alara slumped in her chair. He's good. I'll give him that. Every move we make, he's got a counter-move ready. Not every move, Vittorio said thoughtfully. He's reacting to us. That means he's scared. Scared people are dangerous.
True.
But scared people also make mistakes. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Sarah, it's me. I need you to send Marco the preliminary agenda for the shareholders meeting. Yes, include everything. Because I want him to think he knows what's coming. He hung up and turned to Alara. We're going to give Marco exactly what he expects. A straightforward presentation of financial irregularities delivered by you, with recommendations for internal review. But that's not what we're actually going to do. The agenda is bait. Marco will prepare his defense based on what he thinks we're presenting. But the real presentation?
Vittorio smiled.
That's going to be very different. Over the next 2 days, they built 2 presentations. The official one, bland and procedural, went to the board as scheduled. The real one, devastating and comprehensive, stayed hidden. We're not just showing fraud, Vittorio explained as they worked. We're showing pattern and intent. We're showing how Marco built this scheme over 18 months. How he cultivated relationships with the Castellanos specifically to undermine me. How every move was designed to weaken my position while strengthening his. Alara added the final slide, a timeline connecting Marco's meetings with Vincent Castellano to specific acts of fraud, all documented with photos Frank's people had obtained. This isn't just accounting, she said. This is a story. A story about betrayal. Exactly. And stories are what people remember. The night before the meeting, Vittorio asked Alara to join him for dinner. She expected the war room or his office. Instead, Thomas drove them to a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, just red checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce. This was my father's favorite place, Vittorio said as they sat down. Before the money, before everything got complicated. He used to bring me here and tell me that power means nothing if you lose yourself getting it. Sounds like a wise man.
He was.
He also would have liked you. Vittorio poured them both wine. You would have argued with him about accounting practices and made him laugh. I'm not sure whether to be honored or terrified. Both is appropriate. He raised his glass. To tomorrow. To truth and consequences. Alara clinked her glass against his. And to no more tests. And to no more tests, he agreed. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Vittorio said quietly, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that hiring you was the best decision I've made in years. Not because of the audit. Because you reminded me that not everyone has an agenda. That some people just do what's right."
Vittorio.
Let me finish. After my wife died, I stopped trusting anyone outside my immediate circle. I built walls, made everything about control and power. Then you walked into my life defending my daughter, expecting nothing in return. You've been doing that ever since, expecting nothing, giving everything. Alara felt her throat tighten. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I gave you a job. You gave me back my faith in people. He reached across the table and took her hand. Tomorrow we walk into that room together.
No guns, no threats, no violence.
Just truth. That's not how my family usually handles betrayal. Then maybe it's time for a new way. Maybe it is. They finished dinner and drove back to the city in silence, hands still linked in the back of the car. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, they had a moment of peace before the storm. The boardroom on the 40th floor of DeLuca Holdings was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. A table of polished black granite stretched the length of the room. 20 leather chairs, each worth more than Alara's first car, surrounded it like thrones. She arrived early with Vittorio and Frank, setting up the presentation equipment. Her hands trembled slightly as she loaded the flash drive, not the one from the official agenda, but the real one. Breathe, Vittorio said quietly, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the window. You've done this 100 times in rehearsal. Those weren't real. Neither is this, in a way. It's just theater. Expensive theater with consequences, but still theater. He turned to face her. Remember what I taught you. Watch their faces. The moment you see someone nodding, that's your ally. The moment someone looks away, press harder. Shareholders began filing in at 9 a.m. sharp. Alara recognized some from Frank's briefings. Old men and older money, women with sharp eyes and sharper jewelry, and younger faces trying to look like they belonged. Marco arrived at 9:10, fashionably late, with Vincent Castellano beside him. Vincent was exactly what Alara expected: silver hair, expensive suit, smile like a shark. He shook hands with the shareholders who mattered, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and radiated the kind of casual menace that came from 40 years of getting his way. Marco spotted Alara and his expression flickered, just for a second, with something that might have been concern. Then he smiled, all charm and confidence. "Cousin," he said, embracing Vittorio. "I'm glad we're finally addressing these concerns. Transparency is so important." "I agree completely," Vittorio said smoothly. "Shall we begin?" They took their seats. Vittorio at the head of the table, Marco to his right, Ilera to his left. Vincent Castellano sat 3 chairs down, perfectly positioned to observe everything. The board chairman, an elderly man named Robert Chen, no relation, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address allegations of financial irregularities in the restaurant division," he said. "Mr. DeLuca has requested this special session to review findings from an internal audit. Ms. Chun, you have the floor." Ilera stood, and every eye in the room fixed on her. "Thank you," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Over the past 6 weeks, I've conducted a comprehensive audit of the restaurant division's finances. What I found was a systematic pattern of fraud spanning 18 months and totaling $23 million. She clicked to the first slide, not the bland overview from the fake agenda, but a stark graphic showing money flowing from DeLuca Holdings through shell companies. Marco's smile faltered. 3 vendor companies, Castellano Food Imports, Meridian Premium Supplies, and Verde Gourmet Distributors, received regular payments for goods never delivered to restaurants that never ordered them.
Click.
Next slide. The routing numbers, all leading back to the same Delaware bank. These companies exist only on paper. They were registered on the same day by the same incorporation service, and they all trace back to accounts controlled by one person. She let that hang in the air. Several shareholders leaned forward. "That's a serious accusation," Marco said, his voice tight. "Do you have proof?" "I do." Click. Bank records appeared on screen. These accounts were opened using executive authorization codes. Only 3 people have those codes for the restaurant division. She looked directly at Marco. "You, the CFO Sarah Chen, and Mr. DeLuca himself." "This is absurd," Marco said, standing. "Obviously someone forged those codes. It could be anyone. It could be," Ilera agreed. "Except for this." Click. Photos filled the screen. Marco having dinner with Vincent Castellano. Marco meeting with the document forger in Queens. Marco at a bank in the Caymans. These photos show you meeting with Vincent Castellano on 12 separate occasions over the past year. Each meeting occurred within 72 hours of a fraudulent payment. Vincent Castellano's smile had disappeared. Several shareholders were staring at him. "Business meetings," Marco said quickly. "Perfectly legitimate. Vincent and I were discussing potential partnerships. Partnerships like the 2 restaurants you transferred into your personal name 3 weeks ago?" Vittorio's voice cut through the room like a blade.
La Verona and Casabianca.
Both transferred out of DeLuca Holdings without board approval.
Click.
Ilera brought up the transfer documents. "The plan was simple," she continued. "Steal money through fake vendors. Build relationships with a rival family. Transfer valuable properties into your personal control. Then sell them to the Castellanos at below-market rates in exchange for a cut of future profits." "You have no proof of that," Marco snapped. "Actually, I do." Click. Emails appeared on screen. Not the forged ones Marco had tried to plant on Ilera, but real ones from his own private server. "These are from your personal email account. Discussing terms of sale with Mr. Castellano. Negotiating percentages. Planning how to split my cousin's empire between you." The room erupted. Shareholders talking over each other. Robert Chen banging his gavel. Marco pointing at the screen, his face red, shouting about illegal surveillance and invasion of privacy. But Ilera watched the faces, just like Vittorio had taught her. 3 shareholders were nodding. 2 more looked furious at Marco. One was already on her phone, likely calling lawyers. They were winning. "This is a setup."
Marcos Chautid.
"Vittorio's using this girl to eliminate me because he's weak. Because he can't handle competition. Everyone in this room knows the old ways are dying. The families need to evolve, and Vittorio's too stuck in the past to see it." "The old ways," Vittorio said quietly, standing up. His voice wasn't loud, but somehow it silenced the entire room. "You talk about evolution while you steal from family, while you sell your own blood for profit." He walked around the table until he was face to face with Marco. "My family name stands for loyalty, for honor, My father built this empire on handshakes and keeping his word. You sold that for a house in the Caymans and a piece of Vincent Castellano's business. The business was dying under your leadership. The business, Vittorio said, each word precise and cold, was fine. What wasn't fine was you.
Stealing.
Lying. Using my daughter's humiliation as a publicity stunt to make me look weak. Marco's face went white. I don't know what you're. The incident at La Verona. When your manager tried to throw out my 10-year-old daughter while cameras mysteriously happened to be rolling. That footage was leaked to 3 news outlets within an hour. By you.
Vittorio stepped closer.
You wanted me to look incompetent. Like I couldn't even protect my own child. So the other families would question my authority.
Vittorio.
Security, Vittorio said calmly. Please escort Mr. DeLuca from the building. 2 men in dark suits appeared at the doors. Marco looked around the room, searching for allies. But the shareholders were already turning away, pulling out phones, distancing themselves. Even Vincent Castellano was standing up, straightening his tie, preparing to leave before he got pulled into the wreckage. This isn't over, Marco hissed as security took his arms. Yes, Vittorio said. It is. They led Marco out, and the room fell silent. Alara stood at the front, her presentation still glowing on the screen behind her, and realized she was shaking. Miss Chun, Robertson said. On behalf of the board, I want to thank you for your thorough and damning work. I believe we have everything we need for a vote. The vote was unanimous. Marco was out. 3 weeks after the shareholders' meeting, Alara stood in the empty shell of La Verona. The restaurant had been closed for renovations, or so the sign on the door claimed. In reality, Vittorio had shut it down pending a complete restructuring of his business operations. It's strange seeing it like this, she said, running her hand along the bar. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. So quiet. Vittorio stood near table 5, the same table where everything had begun. This place started it all. Lucia sitting here alone. You defending her. Marco's plan falling apart. Do you think he knew? Alara asked. That his whole scheme would unravel because a waitress wouldn't let a child be humiliated? I think Marco got so focused on the big picture that he forgot about the details. He forgot that small moments of kindness can change everything. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Marco was facing federal charges for fraud and money laundering. Vincent Castellano had disappeared, his lawyers claiming he was merely an innocent business consultant. The restaurant division had been completely audited, with Alara overseeing every step. But the biggest changes weren't in the business. Vittorio had begun systematically dismantling the old criminal connections his family had maintained for decades. Money laundering operations were shut down. Questionable partnerships were dissolved. He'd even hired a team of lawyers to help transition every business venture into legitimate, above-board operations. My father would be proud, he told Alara one night, looking exhausted but lighter somehow. Or maybe horrified. It's hard to say. Why are you really doing this? She'd asked. Because I have a daughter who's watching how I live my life. And I want her to be proud of me, not afraid of me. Now, standing in the empty restaurant, Alara watched Vittorio trace his fingers along the edge of table 5. Lucia asked to come here yesterday, he said. I told her it wasn't ready yet, but she insisted. She wanted to see the place where her guardian angel worked. Alara laughed. Guardian angel? I just stopped a jerk from yelling at her. To her, that's exactly what an angel does. Appears when you need them most, he turned to face her. She's doing better. Really better. Dr. Martinez says she's made more progress in the past 2 months than in the previous 6-inch. She's a strong kid.
She is.
But she needed someone to show her it was safe to be strong again. That was you. Alara felt her chest tighten. Over the past weeks, she'd spent more time with Lucia, helping with homework, teaching her about compound interest and basic accounting, listening to her talk about her mother. She told me about the accident. Alara said quietly. About how she feels guilty for surviving. What did you say? I told her about my grandmother, how she died when I was 17, right before college. How I felt guilty for years because our last conversation was an argument about my major. She wanted me to be a doctor. I wanted to study accounting. I didn't know that. I don't talk about it much. But I told Lucia that guilt is just love with nowhere to go. That her mother wouldn't want her to stop living because of grief. She'd want her to live enough for both of them. Vittoria was quiet for a long moment. She came to me that night and asked if she could visit her mother's grave. She hadn't been able to face it since the funeral. We went together. She told her mom about you, about school, about everything. She talked for an hour. Alara felt tears prick her eyes. That's wonderful. You gave her that. You gave her the courage to grieve properly. He moved closer. You've given us both more than you realize. The air between them felt charged, familiar from a dozen late nights working together, but different now. Heavier with possibility.
Vittorio.
I'm restructuring the company, he said. Making everything legitimate, cutting ties with the old business. It's going to take years, and it's going to be messy, but I'm doing it. I know. I'm proud of you. I want you to be part of it, not just as an auditor, as chief financial officer. Alara's eyes widened. That's Sarah's job. Sarah's retiring. She's been wanting to for years, but stayed out of loyalty. Now she's ready to step down, and I need someone I trust completely. Someone who puts honesty above everything else. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. That's a huge responsibility. I know. That's why I'm asking you, he paused. There's something else. Something personal. Her heart started pounding. These past 2 months, working with you, watching you with Lucia, seeing who you are when the pressure's on. Alara, you've changed my life. Both our lives. Vittorio, I don't. I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said quickly. I know this is complicated. I'm your boss. I come with baggage and a daughter and a past that's not entirely clean yet. But I need you to know how I feel. How we both feel. We. As if summoned, the restaurant door opened. Lucia came running in, followed by Thomas, who gave an apologetic shrug.
Papa.
Alara. Lucia's face was bright with excitement. You have to see what I made. She thrust a folder at Alara. Inside was a hand-drawn picture, 3 people sitting at a table, smiling. A man, a woman, and a girl. Above it, in careful lettering, my new family. Alara looked at Lucia, then at Vittorio, whose eyes had gone suspiciously bright. I know my mama can't come back, Lucia said seriously. Dr. Martinez says that's okay to accept. But she also said families can grow. That love doesn't run out just because you share it with new people. She looked between them with the devastating honesty of a child who'd learned too young that life was fragile. So, I was thinking, maybe we could be a family? The 3 of us? If that's okay. Alara knelt down so she was eye level with Lucia. Sweetheart, that's not really my decision to. It is though, Vittorio said quietly. If you want it to be. Alara looked at this man who'd offered her a job when she had nothing, who'd trusted her with his secrets, who'd let her into his daughter's healing heart. This man who was trying to be better, to build something good from complicated foundations. I want the CFO position, she said finally. And I want time. Time to do this right, with no rushing, no pressure. Agreed. And I want to keep helping Lucia with her homework. Please do. Her math is beyond me. Lucia giggled. And Vittorio? Alara stood up, meeting his eyes. I want to see where this goes. All of it. The business, the family, everything. But slowly, carefully. He smiled, that genuine smile she'd come to treasure. Slowly and carefully. I can do that. Lucia grabbed both their hands. Does this mean Alara's staying? Yes, sweetheart, Vittorio said, looking at Alara. She's staying. 6 months later, Alara received a certified letter at her new office, the CFO suite on the executive floor. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a smaller sealed envelope marked, Open First. She unfolded the letter, recognizing Vittorio's handwriting immediately. Alara, 6 months ago, you walked into a shareholders' meeting and helped me save my company. But more importantly, you helped me save myself. You showed me that power built on fear is hollow, and that real strength comes from honesty.
La Verona reopens tonight.
I've enclosed something that I hope you'll accept, not as payment for what you've done, but as recognition of what you've become to us. The reservation is at 7. Dress code. Come as you are.
There.
Alara opened the smaller envelope with trembling fingers. A property deed slid out. Her name was printed across the top in official legal text, Alara Chun, owner, La Verona Restaurant. She read it 3 times, certain she was misunderstanding.
Her phone rang. Vittorio.
Before you say no, he started. This is insane. It's justice. You lost your job defending my daughter at that restaurant. Now it's yours. Vittorio, I can't accept. Yes, you can. I've already filed the paperwork. La Verona is yours, completely. No strings, no conditions. What you do with it is entirely your choice. Alara stared at the deed, overwhelmed. I don't know how to run a restaurant. Lucky for you, you're dating someone who owns 12 of them. She could hear the smile in his voice. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Lucia's been cooking all day. Lucia's been what? You'll see. Thomas drove her to La Verona as the sun set over the city. The restaurant glowed with warm light, and through the windows, she could see it had been completely transformed. The heavy, intimidating decor was gone. In its place were lighter woods, softer colors, and an openness that made the space feel welcoming instead of exclusive. Thomas opened her door. Ms. Chun, your restaurant awaits. Inside, soft music played. The tables were empty except for one. Table 5. Vittorio stood when she entered, wearing a dark suit but no tie. Lucia sat beside him in a navy dress, practically bouncing with excitement. You're here. Lucia jumped up and grabbed Alara's hand. Come see, come see. She pulled Alara to table 5, where 3 place settings waited. But what caught her attention was the small plaque mounted on the wall behind the table. Table 5, where courage began. Papa said this is where you defended me, Lucia explained. So we made it special. This table is always reserved for people who need defending, like a safe spot. Alara's vision blurred with tears. Lucia, that's beautiful. It was her idea, Vittorio said, coming to stand beside them. The whole concept for the restaurant. She wanted it to be a place where everyone feels safe, where no one gets thrown out for being different or alone or scared. We're going to have community dinners every Sunday, Lucia added, for people who don't have families, and scholarships for kids who want to learn cooking. And you're going to let Alara sit down before you tell her the whole business plan, Vittorio interrupted gently. They sat at table 5, the same spot where everything had changed, and Lucia served them pasta she'd made with the chef, slightly overcooked but full of love. How does it feel? Vittorio asked as they ate. Being a restaurant owner? Terrifying. Overwhelming. Perfect. Alara looked around at the transformed space. I can't believe you did all this. I didn't. You did. You turned humiliation into honor. You took the worst moment of Lucia's life and made it the beginning of something good. This restaurant isn't just about food. It's about what you taught us. That defending someone, standing up for what's right, that matters. Lucia reached across the table and took Alara's hand. You saved me that day. Not just from the mean manager. You saved me from feeling invisible. Like I didn't matter. You've always mattered, Alara said softly. I know that now. Because of you. They finished dinner as the city lights flickered on outside. Vittorio told stories about the renovations, about the chef he'd hired who specialized in teaching young people culinary skills, about his vision for turning La Verona into something more than just another expensive restaurant. I'm making everything right, he said quietly. The business, the family legacy, all of it. It's slow, and some days it feels impossible, but I'm doing it. For Lucia. For myself. He reached across the table and took Alara's other hand, so the three of them formed a connected circle. And for you, because you showed me what integrity looks like, even when it costs you everything. Alara looked at them. This man who is rebuilding his life with painful honesty, and this girl who is learning to trust and laugh again, and felt something settle in her chest. This was family. Not perfect, not simple, but real. So, Vittorio said with a smile, what does the new owner of La Verona want to do first? Alara looked around the restaurant, at table 5 with its plaque about courage, at the warm lights and open space designed to welcome instead of intimidate. I want to open the doors, she said. I want to fill this place with people who need somewhere safe to belong. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Lucia squeezed both their hands. Together. Together, Alara and Vittorio echoed. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside La Verona, at table 5 where it all began, 3 people sat in the warm light, a family forged not by blood, but by courage, honesty, and the simple act of defending someone who needed it. And for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, they all felt like they'd finally come home. The end.